Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shelina Begum. I'm the Business Desk Northwest editor, and I welcome you to our session, which will put the spotlight on diversity and inclusion in the Midlands. A diverse workforce and inclusive culture are essential ingredients, not only for sustained success, but to the growth of the region's economy. Too often, workforces and senior leadership are not reflective of the populations they serve. As the most diverse region in the UK, the Midlands is already helping to set the agenda on diversity and inclusion. This session will focus on how greater inclusivity can drive economic growth and make it a better place to live and work. Joining us in the expert panel, I'm going to bring them onto the stage now. I'm going to welcome Anita, Bhalla, Chair of the WM Leadership Commission, Powell, Creative and Events Director at Aston Performing Arts Academy, Reshma, Sheikh, MD at Octavian Security UK, and Sarah King, co-founder of We Are Radikl. Welcome, guys. Before we start, just to let you guys know, there's a Q&A button at the corner of your screen. Please do ask any questions. I will try my best to put them to the panelists. So just to kick off, guys, I'm going to just ask a round robin question for everybody. What does inclusivity look like for you guys, and what does it mean for the Midlands? And I'll start with you, Anita.
Wow. Okay. What does it mean to me? It's about self-determination and equal participation. And if we get those right, then we'll have a society that's more vibrant, engaged, and actually adding to the wider good of the whole of the economy. So is that short enough?
Thanks, Anita. I'll move on to Reshma.
It's taking advantage of the best pool of talent. We're actually very lucky that in the Midlands we've got a massive, diverse set of pool of talent and having a team that not only understands but also represents the community. And success for me basically would mean a strong sense of connection within your teams and an engaging culture that everybody feels they belong. And I'm hoping that's what I've created within my company.
That's Reshma. And True?
So for me, inclusion really is respecting and acknowledging that diversity of thought and what that can bring. It's really about understanding the difference and the values that comes with difference, and not othering the difference, but embracing it and including it in every facet, follicle of the business.
That's true. And Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I just add to that. I think it's about the people. It's ensuring that people are able to say, I feel I belong, I feel connected. And I think particularly with this lens, that people feel that they have a role to play and also the opportunity to shape not only their own future, but the future of their communities, the future of the region. And I think that's key. It's that belief that I can play this role matched with opportunity. And I think when you bring those two things together, that's where you start to see real inclusion.
Thanks, Sarah. As I've mentioned before, the Midlands it's a very diverse region, and it's doing quite a lot to set the agenda for diversity and inclusion, and lots of schemes taking place, initiatives. Anita, I know one of the things that they're doing in the Midlands is the race code, and they're piloting that at the moment, and that's sort of aiming to encourage race equality in the boardroom. Do you think schemes like that are enough of a step change to bring about the change that we need in organisations?
It's only one scheme, and one scheme isn't going to fix the issue here. We have got to have lots and lots of initiatives. I mean, years ago, I chaired the Leadership Commission for the West Midlands Combined Authority, we produced our findings in 2018. Since then, a whole lot of initiatives have been implemented or in the process of being implemented. But what we need to keep on doing is to listening to the people, engaging with our communities, because we can have a host of initiatives, but if they don't make any impact and we haven't got the data to show that they're making an impact, then it's pointless having them. Years ago, it was all to do with, people used to say, it's all to do with HR policies. Get your HR policies right, and recruitment and fairness and everything will follow. Well, it's not good enough just to get your HR policies right. Our inclusive leadership has got to come right from the top. We've got to put leaders from all the variety of communities into those positions of power. So the race code is only one. I mean, we're doing workshops to get people board ready. We've still got 15% of our population in Birmingham that feels totally excluded and not engaged. And then if you look what the pandemic has done and the unemployment rates, that's even compounded more. So one initiative is not going to fix the problem.
You think there's a lot more work to do? Sounds like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think the senior leaders in West Midlands and across the cities are listening?
Well, I think they're listening. I think people listen, but what do they do with the listening? So as a result of the Leadership Commission, we've really thrown a challenge out, not only to the politicians, but to the business leaders, because actually it makes economic sense. If we don't have an inclusive workshop, if we don't have people engaging and being part of society, we're missing out on so much talent. Mm-hmm. There's so much talent out there that would propel the region further. We've got a whole recovery initiatives at the moment as post COVID. Those initiatives will only work. Those initiatives will only get our economy working if everyone participates and is given the opportunity to participate equally.
Would you say that the region's recovery from the pandemic has been inclusive? I think people are still feeling left out.
No, I think that if you look at the health inequalities that the pandemic has thrown up, and health inequalities have been around for decades, for years. What it's given us an opportunity to do is to look at health inequalities through maybe a different lens and not just see them as a disease-orientated inequality, but actually housing, unemployment, skills deficit, where are the apprenticeships? So maybe what we're going to get is an opportunity to really push our political leaders and our business leaders to think about the inequalities in a different way. And I think because everybody has been frightened a bit by the health inequalities that have been thrown up, whoever you are, and I think that's got to be a good opportunity for us to shift that dial, because unless we can shift it, those health inequalities and all the other inequalities attached to health will not be dealt with.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm just going to come to you, True, yourself. So, you've been a strong advocate for change, in the Midlands, empowering young people through your organisation. Last year, started delivering diversity training, and I know that was in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement. For yourself, are you finding that organisations are listening to you? Do they want to be part of the solution?
So I'm going to be as honest as possible, but trying to keep it diplomatic. But the short answer is, in some cases, yes, but a lot of organisations, particularly in the wake of Black Lives Matter, it was very performative. It was, we need to put out a black square, but not really embrace inclusion. We need to write a press release, how we need to give £10,000 to an organisation, an anti-racist organisation, but actually for me that was performative. And the reason why I say that is because where are they now? What work are they doing now? And that makes me a little bit sad, if I'm honest, because that was at the point where I really felt optimistic about there being change, rapid change. Now what I'm not saying is that there hasn't been any change, because I've seen a lot of organisations step up to the plate, and I've also seen a lot of organisations address some of the gaps when it comes to inclusion on their boards and in their senior leadership team, which has been absolutely amazing. But we still have so much more to go. And I always say inclusion for me is not just about offering a seat at that table, because again, that will be performative, that will be a tick box exercise, but it's actually about allowing that person to have a meal, be a part of that meal, be a part of those conversations, be a part of the discussion. It's no longer, for me, acceptable to say, well, yeah, we're just going to give you a seat at the table, because I'm not no seat warmer. I want my voice to be heard. I want my values. I want my culture. I want everything about my being and my community to be involved in the decision making. Because what that will do is that will benefit others from my community, because I understand their needs, I understand their wants, and I'm bringing it to the table. And I think that for me, that's what we need to be doing.
Yeah, it feels it's a bit disappointing, really, that it took the BLM movement to get people talking about it. But then that was a year ago.
Yeah.
And as you said, not much has happened. People are talking about it, putting people on the board, but it's not enough, is it?
Yeah, and one of the problems is, just to slightly kind of digress, is the silly race report that was given, that was commissioned by the government, which kind of denounced any form of institutionalized racism. And what that did was, not only did it gaslight people who were victims of racism and institutionalized racism, but actually it kind of took ownership or onus off some of the employers, off some of the business, off some of the senior leaders, whereby they may not think now, because of this report, that they're complicit to racism, and may continue what they've already done, leaving gaps in senior leadership where different people from different communities could feel, because they don't believe that there's a problem. And I think a lot of it does start from policy level, and one of the biggest letdowns of all was, even though some organizations and businesses had the appetite to change, and it wasn't led by government. And for me, that's a big letdown. Government didn't treat it with the severity that it deserved.
Yeah, and I think there's a long way to go before we get those conversations going. I mean, you work with a lot of young people, and you have access to people that other organizations might not have. But how do we engage with those young people? I mean, they clearly don't feel represented.
And I think, again, it is that inclusive piece. It's that sense of belonging, and people really underestimate the feeling of belonging. If you belong somewhere and if you feel safe, your productivity is going to go through the roof, your efficiency is going to go through the roof, which means that the company that you are working in is going to benefit dramatically. The city that you are living in is also going to benefit, because you're happy in the city, you're happy for your kids to go to school in the city, but you're also happy to go out and spend money in the city and go out, which again would increase the economy. So it really is important that we understand how powerful belonging is, and that for me is how you engage with young people. We in our academy work with a specific set of young people. It isn't really about numbers, it's more about names, and it's more about understanding that young person. And it's also about working with them and giving them the sense of belonging within our organization, so they feel empowered. And which is why the results that we spew are absolutely fantastic, because they feel as though they belong. Yes, it's a small organization, and that's very much on a micro level, but the philosophy is still the same and can be applied on a macro level to large, big organizations. And an example of that for me is Gymshark, who predominantly are a very much diverse workforce. The average age is under 35, and they are one of the fastest growing organizations, businesses in the country right now. And that's because they've embraced that diversity of thought, they've embraced young people's diversity, and they've created a new era of entrepreneurs and a new era of as to how to do business, and running with it and moving with the times. And for me, that is a massive example as to why it's important to actually make your employees feel as though they belong.
Yeah, absolutely, completely. I want to just move to you, Reshma. You're the MD of, it's a global organisation, and I read somewhere that you once told security isn't an industry for women with nice nails, and I would have told that person. But yeah, I mean, how do you deal with stuff like? Yeah, I think you need nice nails no matter what organisation you work in. But yeah, how do you deal with with comments like that, and there's a perception that your industry is male dominated, but actually you guys have done quite a good job in getting quite a diverse workforce, females, ethnic minorities.
Yeah, and that actually was said to me once. It's a very male dominated area, and I'm a break for the norm. I'm not the typical stereotypical owner of a security company. But I am different. I'm add to the mix. I bring a different dimension to it, and that's why my team are the same. I've got a very diverse team. I echo a lot of things that both Anita and True and Sarah have said, that you can have diversity within a business, but without inclusivity, it's just going to be a toxic environment. It's not going to work. And you can have inclusivity, but without diversity, and that you just got a stagnant company. You're not going to go far. You're not going to go further. It just can't work. So, because of my experiences, I worked in the corporate sector in the Midlands for many, many years. I was very much an advocate for diversity within the company, because I was the first person in my family to go to university. You know, I was told by my careers advisor that with my language skills, the corporate sector wouldn't be appropriate for me, because I'm a corporate lawyer by background. I should go for criminal law or immigration, but academically I was better in business. But, you know, and I went through that 20 odd years ago, but I broke that barrier, that glass ceiling. I broke that, and I came into the sector, and then I wanted to bring other people like me, and I wanted to be that stepping stone, because I didn't have any big corporate. The most corporate person I knew was a doctor. That was it. So hence, but then I struggled. Everybody wanted to know the business case for it. They didn't understand the benefits, the stuff that's True saying, and this is what I've embraced in my business. Profits, it has a ripple effect. You've got an engaged workforce. They're a happy workforce. I call them my Octavian family. They go that extra mile. They work that extra bit harder. They help grow. Where I've got weaknesses and I don't see something, they all see it as well. So I've benefited from my experiences. I brought that into my business, and our profits are great. We survived, you know, the last 12 months, and we're very resilient. In fact, we did better, and that's because of the great team I have. So, as you said, you know, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah,
inclusivity is a no-brainer.
Yeah, and it goes down, I think you mentioned it before, that inclusivity and diversity, it creates that culture that you want in your organisation, and people, they feel it when they're working for you, don't they?
Yeah, and I don't see what I'm doing different. It's just second nature for me. We're all a great team. We're all different. We all add to the mix. And, you know, I just feel that I've got a great team because of that. You know, it's had a ripple effect on my profitability. I definitely think it is because I've got a diverse business. My team morale is great. We get on like a house on fire. We're very, very different personalities. My retention rate's brilliant.
Yeah, I know. I mean, you can't have 5 white males on a board all saying the same things and doing the same things, can you? I'm going to, thanks for that, Reshma. I'm going to move on to Sarah. So you're co-founder of We Are Radikl. It's a dedicated platform to help women to launch and grow their business. And just one of the stats that I've read on your website, women get just 1% of UK venture capital funding. And for some, that's shocking, and for some, it's not that surprising. But you're doing something about it now, aren't you?
Yeah, so we've spent the last 2.5 years just understanding the experience of women entrepreneurs. And I think to something True said earlier, you know, change has to start by understanding people's experience. And that requires new people to come into a space and to say, this is my experience, and also I'm willing to listen to other people's experience. And it requires the existing incumbents and the existing ecosystem to be prepared to really listen, to understand what needs to change. And that can be hard, but that's the only way that change can happen. So we spent 2.5 years understanding the experience of women entrepreneurs, looking at the research. You've mentioned one of the stats, so 1% of VC funding in the UK goes to women-founded businesses, 0.02% goes to Black women founders. Like, the stats are appalling. And having gone through our own investment round earlier this year on the back of the pandemic, whilst also juggling homeschooling, we just looked at that system and said, well, what invisible barriers are there? For any entrepreneur to access the Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme, which is a tax incentive for investors, you have to have your business investment ready within the first 2 years of trading. You also need to know a set of investors that you could approach, and you also need to know the scheme exists. Well, we know for women and underrepresented entrepreneurs, all of those things are less likely to be true because the existing system of support doesn't necessarily see us, and so isn't designed with our set of needs in mind. So we're calling on the government to extend the SEIS deadline from 2 years to 3 years. We're also asking for gender, race and ethnicity reporting to be introduced on the Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme, both for entrepreneurs, but also for investors who are using the scheme to make investments. And then also for a redirection of funds. So a significant amount of funding is directed to businesses who have 5 or more employees and who have hit the £100,000 turnover mark. But actually we need more grassroots support, and we need more funding directed at young entrepreneurs, at entrepreneurs who maybe don't see themselves in the existing ecosystem and so need that confidence boost alongside all of the know-how of growing a business that could be invested in. We want to see a redirection of funding towards those people to understand their experience and then put support in place that means that within those populations, within those communities, that's where we're going to see the next businesses that are really disruptive, that develop products and services for people who are currently underserved. And I think that's where this region has got a really exciting opportunity because it is a diverse region. We need to recognise at a strategic level and make a strategic commitment to diversity and inclusion. And then we need to fuel grassroots change, you know, to what True was saying, working with young people and fueling that belief that I have a role and I can do something to influence my future. I think that combination is really powerful.
Yeah, and it also goes back to what you said earlier about that belonging, and many people don't feel they belong in that space, let alone the VC space, which, you know, you don't see hardly any women in that space at all.
Right. And I think, you know, there is so much that is, you know, glamorized, and the whole Dragon's Den thing, and people sat at a coffee table with a wad of money. It's just kind of, actually, that's not what this is about. This is about people identifying needs that aren't being met and feeling empowered to say, I believe I can influence that. And who am I connected to that could help me to play that role? It gives me goosebumps because I just think that's so empowering, and that, like, that's where real change is going to come from. That commitment at a strategic level that diversity and inclusion is important, is a priority, it's not an afterthought.
Yeah.
But then that belief is fueled at a grassroots level to say, yeah, you can play a role, and here's the support and know-how and connection for you to be able to do that.
So Anita, you're going to jump in then.
I was just going to say that the very important points, you know, leadership's got to be owned right at the top of all our organisations, but we've also got to listen, and True alluded to this, listen to people's voices. When we did the commission report, we took a heart and heads approach. We number crunched the data and found out what the statistics are, but we did focus groups with real people telling us what they were feeling. And, you know, I've got a list of people who were telling us that leaders recruit people in their own image, so hence you're excluded. And they talked about institutional racism, and they talked about the barriers. Now, unless we carry on listening to those people and saying, have things really changed for you, we're not going to get a true picture. And I think when we hear government talking about the levelling up agenda, what does that mean for our region? Well, the levelling up agenda, you could put a whole lot of proposals through to government and say, yeah, this is what we need for our region. But actually, if that levelling up agenda and the initiatives are not reflective of what's really happening on the ground and haven't taken into consideration the voice of our communities who are telling us some stark realities about their life, then that levelling up agenda is not going to work for us. What we're going to do is prop up the same again. And I think there's an opportunity here for us really to grab this agenda and see how we influence it right from grassroots. And businesses got taking it very seriously. It can't be just a way of bringing more money into our region without that money being scrutinised.
Yeah, but more of the same people talking about the same issues and not getting those new voices and new people in that. I mean, it's like, in city centres, sometimes they're just a mile or 2 miles down the road from very, very diverse communities. Yeah, you might go to a financial area of a city and you don't see a single Black person, but they're just a mile down the road. I mean, how do we engage, or get business to engage with that community and vice versa? Like in Manchester, for example, you don't see many Black people in Spinningfields, for example. And then I went to an event once where there was a Black professional and he said to me, why is it when I come to these events, the only other Black person I see is a person serving me drinks? And there's massive, big inequality there. And, we need to start tackling that.
Really, really good point. And I think for me, it really is about, because I've been that only Black person in that space. And when we go to the events, and the only other Black people are the waiters or maybe the performers. And it really is, the first step is about the privileged to acknowledge their privilege and acknowledge, actually, why aren't we sitting in a diverse space? Like, where are the diverse people? And calling it out. Gone were the days where we need to be, where we're silent about seeing things that kind of don't sit right. I think we're all aware since last year about kind of race relations and the importance of inclusion and diversity. So when we do enter those spaces that is predominantly white and there isn't any kind of representation at all, we need to be calling it out, and we need to be saying, this is saying actually that there's no Black people or non-white people that's good enough for this space or that's talented enough for this space, which is absolutely incorrect. Or we can't find them, and the latter we can no longer accept as an excuse. If you are not getting any applicants from a non-white background, then it is incumbent upon you as a company and as senior leadership to find those people, to adapt your application process to see what are you doing wrong. You have to review it, you have to adapt, you have to work away, it has to happen. Gone were the days where we have these excuses about, oh, we just haven't got the applicants, or whose fault's that? Why aren't you getting the applicants from a non-white background? Is it because the non-white people don't feel safe in that space or don't want to apply, or your reputation, or there has to be a reason? And that's the soul searching that some of these organizations and companies really have to do to get to grips of, because what they're doing at the moment is shifting blame. Is, oh, it's not our fault, we're just not getting the applicants. That needs to go out the window. There needs to be a new approach, and we as a collective, nobody should be above reproach. It could be the most amazing company, it looks like it's shining. If they don't have representation, if they don't have diversity inclusion, all of us should be calling them out.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, sometimes I think it's quite simple. You might not advertise in national papers. You go and advertise in the magazine that your young person is reading. It's as simple as that sometimes. Reshma, I mean, you've done, because we touched on it earlier, you've done quite well, and you've got quite a diverse workforce. I mean, how did you find that? I mean, what's your sort of, I want to say secret, but it's not. It's probably a bit more simple than that, isn't it?
Common sense.
Yeah.
We recruit from the communities we service, and those diverse communities, we go outside. We don't use the traditional methods of just going through one recruitment online portal or the standard, the large newspapers, the small newspapers. We actually go into the communities. I have worked with local job centres. I've worked with local schools and organisations with resettlement projects, refugee resettlement projects. We've created links with them. We see who else in the community can come on, because it's to our benefits to get more women in our workforce, offer flexible working, different languages. We do a lot of work in the education sector, and the language skills makes my business actually better, in the sense we can service all the international students as security guards. That's what I think, as I say, it's common sense, but also there's a USP there. It works. It helps me give a better service by not providing the same type of security guards, by looking at who are we working with and what they need and adapting to that. That bespoke service is what we provide. And for me, it was always just common sense. I never saw, let's just do it that way because we've always done it. But I do know there are individuals who think like that, and within my business as well. So I do discuss and talk quite openly about it. And in terms of recruitment, I think Treve said a lot of points, but we've got an in-house training academy. We do our own diversity and inclusivity training. We have bias training, but I explain why it's important, what the benefits are, because I know that a lot of people will think, well, why do we need to do this? This is not fair. I've had that before. It's not fair. Well, no, actually, it is fair. It's to our benefit, because you're going to have more diverse candidates. Somebody you may have initially thought wasn't a stereotypical individual to work for this business may actually surprise you. And I've recruited, I'm not a traditional individual that you'd see in the security industry. I didn't have a security background. I'm a lawyer, but I have transferable skills. I understand, and me being a woman or being from ethnic minority, being a mummy, all of that adds an offer. And I'm fortunate, when I came into Octavian, they saw that, and I thrived. I actually thrived. So if I can thrive, so can so many other people. And that's the attitude I have from the top, and I push it down to my teams. And that's the most important thing. And it's been successful for us. And we've got, I say, I'm only as good as the people I recruit. They're my ambassadors. So if I recruit the right people, I'm going to be successful.
It's definitely doable, isn't it? We've got people in our panel showing that it has been done. And Sarah, it's a bit the same with you, in terms of attracting the women to your platform, because you've had quite a big success rate in doing that, and people want to come to you and they want the help and the support. They're not getting it elsewhere. And it's that familiarity, isn't it? Like, just coming to another organisation where these women will be helping us as women.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. I think it's, what we've all heard, C1 to B1. And I think we need to disrupt the dominant narrative. We need new stories. We need different stories. We need for people across the region to be able to look at the world of entrepreneurship and investment and say, I can see myself in that. And therefore, if I can see myself, actually, I feel more confident about connecting with that world and believing that what those people have achieved is possible for me to achieve. So I think it's that piece of let's just disrupt the dominant narrative. Let's stop just thinking that this is how it has to be, because actually that's boring, it's outdated. We need creativity, we need innovation in the region, and those things come from bringing diverse people together and ensuring that those people have a voice and have the opportunity. I think then as well, it's so important that it comes back to recognising that people have different needs, and that's okay, and we should recognise and understand what those needs are and design for those needs. Sometimes I hear people say, oh, I want to live in a world where I don't see difference. And I'm like, why would you want to live in that type of world? Like, let's see the difference. Let's celebrate the difference. Let's recognise that actually we need to design for that difference. And when we do, we'll all really benefit from that. I think the people who often maybe have that narrative are the ones who are comfortable with it being as is, and therefore are probably the people who have privilege within that setup and within those structures.
Yeah. Anita, I'm just going to come back to you now. We talk about inclusivity and diversity and recruitment, etc. It's not just that, we need to upskill the right talent as well, and making sure that everybody from different communities have got access to the skills and the training. And that's a challenge in itself as well, isn't it?
It is. I mean, the education deficit needs to be addressed very seriously. We need to take on board, and businesses need to take on board very seriously, initiatives around apprenticeships, because it's not all about, trying to get people to go to university. It is actually about addressing those. And this is where, the business case has got to continue to be made strongly for diversity, diversity of thought, diversity of strength. We've heard it from great examples here. Really, really brings in the business pounds. And I think we've got to sell that, but we can't do that unless we address the education issues, because over many, many years, the education systems have let down our young people, and we need to think about how do we address that. Apprenticeships have let down our young people. We need to address that, and then employment has let them down. So what we need is a strong leaders and some collective leadership here as well. So if you've got people, Reshma, in your organisation, you're bringing in that collective leadership because you don't have all the answers, and we actually need leaders who are imaginative and can understand that their shift can make a huge shift for the businesses. That's in the business world. Equally, the public sector needs to acknowledge what's going on in our communities. And there are some good initiatives there, and the good initiatives don't necessarily sit in our big institutions. They sit in our communities. And I think we should be embracing them. We shouldn't be embarrassed to get our hands dirty as business people and go and look at what's going on in our communities, because there's some terrific practices there. It's just that we're not exposing ourselves to them. We're not learning from them.
Yeah, we definitely be more visible, I guess, because I think, it's seeing as well. It's seeing someone like you out there doing the stuff that you want to do. And I don't think there's enough of that. Would you agree with me, True?
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I think please do not underestimate the power of representation. It truly matters, and you become what you see. And if you see something, it increases your chances to be that and to become that and to aspire to be that. Otherwise, you may see something and think, oh, this is out of my realm, or this doesn't happen to people like me, which is a lot of, those thoughts run through a lot of young people's minds, particularly those disadvantaged young people in whatever way, whether they're female, whether they're non-white, whether they have a disability. If they don't see themselves in somebody who's successful, then it absolutely plays on their mind and their conscience and their confidence, and they genuinely believe that is not for them. And then it's more work to try and break that glass ceiling and to try and encourage them and instill that confidence. So representation for me is hugely important, and actually that's somewhere that we can all start quite easily and implement straight away. That particularly in the Midlands, the diversity that we have at the palm of our hand just needs a bit more work, but there should be no excuse.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, definitely. Not just diversity. I mean, one thing we talk about Black and Asian people, but it's about those socially disadvantaged people as well. Everybody needs to be part of the discussion and celebrating the diversity as well, and acknowledging actually we're not diverse yet, but we want to get there, and there are people that are there to help. I guess collaboration as well. I think that's really important for all four of you to I guess you are doing it to some extent, but I guess going forward probably needs to be more of that. What would you agree with that, Anita?
I will definitely be contacting Anita, Sarah and True afterwards. So that's a little bit of collaboration just after this call.
Love it.
Great.
Brilliant. Well,
we need to engage with each other. We need to talk about it and keep this on the agenda.
Definitely. Well, we're running out of time now for discussion. I really enjoy speaking to you all, and thank you so much for your insight and practical solutions for taking this forward. And like I said, it's common sense most of the time. It's just using it and applying it. Thank you very much. For those of you still watching, please do stay on. We've got another session which is looking at innovation-led growth in the Midlands straight after this, and hope you enjoy the rest of the day. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.